This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 144, Happy Birthday Resonance, 5 content marketing lessons from the last 5 years. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is October 15th, 2015. Well, howdy, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. And of course, if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. Also, if you want to learn more about content marketing, I invite you to download our free audio, 5 Things You Must Know About Content Marketing. To get your copy, go to contentmarketingaudio.com. Okay, last week we tackled a lament that I so often hear from B2B content marketers, and that is, man, if I could only get my content into the hands of the CEO, and they go chasing the C-suite. If you happen to miss that episode, please feel free to check it out on iTunes or Stitcher or via the RSS feed. Today is a very special episode because 5 years ago today, October 15th, yes, Resonance was born. And to celebrate, I'm going to share the 5 biggest content marketing lessons that I've learned over the last 5 years. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. First up on our news feed are some big changes that are have already come to LinkedIn groups. Now, with more than 2 million groups in its network, LinkedIn finally decided it was time to make some updates. And they really listened to a lot of the feedback they've been receiving. A lot of people were complaining about the groups had just become hubs for spam and for self-promotional content, and that they were confused between the private and the non-private groups, and the subgroups were confusing, et cetera, et cetera. So as of, I believe yesterday, October 14th, LinkedIn rolled out huge new changes to the groups. The biggest change is that all groups are now private. Now, what does that mean? That means, number one, that only group members can see discussions. And number 2, only members will be allowed to contribute. So previously, you were able to have an open group where you didn't even need to be a member of the group to get into conversations. Well, all groups are now private. And that's really, come on, folks, it's really as it should be, right? Why join a group if just anybody can contribute, right? Also, another change that goes along with the groups being private is that search engines cannot crawl discussions. So previously, if you searched from within LinkedIn about a particular topic, LinkedIn would find group discussions that had to do with that topic, and those discussions will no longer pop up in search engines. So to keep the privacy of the group. They have also improved their filters to strip out any spammy or low quality content. Saints be praised. They have removed the promotions tab from all groups. And folks, I always thought that was kind of silly to have that there. Who goes to a group saying, gee, I wonder what people are trying to sell me this week. Let me click on the promotions tab and see what they got going on. Just my perspective, but always found it a little silly, and it is going to be going away. New discussions and comments will go live immediately, and the group moderator will have the chance to remove any that he or she does not deem appropriate or in line with the group rules. And this is great news because sometimes, moderators they have different levels of involvement. I have a group on LinkedIn. I am on there every day looking at what needs to be moderated and what doesn't. But some people, some of these group moderators, they check in maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks. So this is a It's kind of to counteract that trend. So discussions and comments will go live immediately, and group moderators will have the chance to remove anything that they do not deem appropriate. And apparently there's going to be like a penalty box where, like, if you have the same member who keeps publishing on content that the group moderator does not deem appropriate, that person can go to the penalty box. I don't know how that works. I know how it works in hockey, but not in LinkedIn. They are also going to be cutting out subgroups. Apparently people were really confused by the whole subgroup thing. So, with these big changes that went into effect yesterday, all subgroups are being converted to standalone groups. So big changes on the LinkedIn group front. So if you are involved in a LinkedIn group in any way, make sure that you brush up on those changes and make sure you know exactly what is going to be going on. Okay, Facebook. Okay, remember a few weeks ago we talked about that rumor that Facebook was going to come out with a dislike button, and I railed against it and talked about why this would be a horrible idea. Well, I guess they were listening, because a dislike button is not going to happen. What Facebook is doing is they are planning to come out with what they call reactions, and that is just what the name says. It's various ways to react to a post without necessarily liking it. And these different reactions are going to be represented by, currently they have 7 different emojis that represent these. And if you're not sure what an emoji is, look it up, because it's the next big thing. It's spelled EMOJI. And these emojis are going to be, like I said, there'll be 7 of them. There will be like, love, haha, yay, wow, sad, and angry. So those will be the 7 ways that people will be able to react to a post when these reactions go live. Facebook is currently testing them in Ireland and in Spain, and if all goes well there, we can probably look for these to be rolled out to all users at some point in the future. Don't know when, don't know how, but they will probably be there at some point. And as for us page managers, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. It's great to give people more options to react to our content. However, when we look at our analytics, we're not looking at a single like count. We're looking at, okay, you got 27 likes, you got 5 loves, 1 haha, 2 angries, 3 sads, a wow, and a yay. It's like, okay, was this post successful or not? So we're going to have to change how we view those analytics and get a little more in depth. I do have a question about these, though. I wonder if the like is so embedded in our Facebook behavior that I wonder how much people are going to be using these other reactions, these other emojis. I can envision this taking quite a while to catch on, just because we are so used to that very quick like. Just my opinion. So look for those at some point in the future. I'll keep you posted. Also, some cool news out of Periscope. Periscope and skipping Periscope. Periscope has launched an on-air button for embedded profiles. So you know how if you are a Periscope broadcaster, you can now have a button on your website that links people to your Periscope profile page. Well, by default, that button is blue, and I think it just says broadcaster with a little Periscope symbol next to it. But now when you're on the air, that little button is automatically going to switch from blue to red, and it's going to have a little live sticker next to it. And so when you go live with a Periscope broadcast, that wherever that button pops up, it is automatically going to let people know that you have something live going on right at this minute. And when they click on that, the browser will open a window showing the broadcast. So yeah, pretty cool little feature from our friends at Periscope. Okay, our content hit of the week, this one's a lot of fun. It's called The Great Big List of Infographic Ideas. This is What Else? An Infographic by Barry Feldman on the Content Marketing Institute blog. And I really want to share this because, we know that infographics get a lot of engagement. We know that people tend to share them more. They get more retweets, repins on Twitter, on Pinterest, etc., etc. And then we sit down to create them and we're like, okay, what do we graph about? What are we going to put in this infographic? And so this is a fun post where Barry shares 25 ideas to get you started creating an infographic for your brand. And they really are quite useful. So I highly recommend this post, checking it out, and I will provide the link in the blog post for this episode. That's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment. Happy birthday, Resonance! 5 content marketing lessons from the last 5 years. Well, happy birthday to us. Oh my goodness. Yes, it was 5 years ago today, on October 15th, 2010, that I walked out of my corporate office and away from the cushy corporate paycheck and the nice predictable 8-to-5 schedule. And that was the day that Resonance was born. Now, I could wax eloquent about how tremendous the past 5 years have been. Trust me, they have been tremendous. But just to suffice to say that really what I am is grateful. I am so grateful to everyone who has helped us get to this point. And I'm especially grateful for you, our podcast audience. We have the best audience in the world. Not that I'm biased, but several folks who have been with us for years and who continue to engage, hit me up on Twitter and LinkedIn and ask me questions and provide suggestions. And it's really been fun. So I want to thank everybody who has helped us get to this point. So yeah, 5 years. I need my whole hand to show you how old we are. That's awesome. And to kind of commemorate this milestone, I wanted to put together and share with you 5 of the biggest content marketing lessons that I have learned over the last 5 years. I've learned much more than this, thank God, but these are the 5 biggest lessons that I really want to share with you. The first thing I want to share that I have learned is that as content marketers, we need to think like farmers and not like hunters. If you look at traditional marketing, it's very much a hunting expedition. Traditional marketers think in terms of campaigns. And what is a campaign but a hunting expedition? And we even use words like target. When we talk about these campaigns, it's, you make your plan and you set your bait and you go out with your weapons and you get your game and you bring it back and you eat it. And for traditional marketing, that approach works. You're going out there telling people about your products and services, making them an offer, and bringing them in as clients or customers. Perfectly logical. And hey, I'm coming from Texas, so I got no problem with hunting. But for content marketing, that we need to look at things very differently. For content marketing, it's much more like farming than it is hunting. Hunting is you go out there and you spend all day and then you come back and eat what you kill. Farming is a long-term commitment. Think about everything that a farmer has to go through to get a crop. He has to plan the crops depending on, the time of year and the geography and the climatic conditions. Has to till the field, plant the seeds, water the seeds, fertilize the seeds, make sure that he's keeping the weeds away and the bugs away. And he cultivates that and takes care of it day after day after day. And this takes time. There is no way to rush the process, whether they're growing lettuce or corn or whatever the crop has to be. It takes time. And so we can't think of content marketing as a campaign. It is an ongoing commitment. Now, that said, we can create campaigns within our content marketing, our overall content marketing strategy. For example, if you have a new ebook coming out, you might have a campaign to promote that. But on the whole, content marketing it's that farmer, planting the seeds, cultivating the seeds day after day after day. And this is something that I try to impart with clients when I start working with them, and sometimes it doesn't sink in. I've had clients fire me after 3 months because they say, dang it, I've had this blog for 3 months and it's not brought me a single client. And that's not how content marketing works. Depending on your activity, it could be a year. it could be 6 months to a year before you start seeing a return on your investment. And it reminds me of a saying that I've heard several times, and it goes something like this. The best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago. The second best time is now. And I think that so encapsulates the approach that we need to take as content marketers. It's not going to happen overnight, but hey, if you get started, then it's better than starting tomorrow, because you're going to start planting those seeds that will pay off down the road. So that was the first thing that I really wanted to share, that I learned, that as content marketers, we are more farmers than we are hunters. The second thing I learned, and man, did I learn this the hard way, is that content marketing does not take the place of sales. And I think this is something more my brothers and sisters in the small business area will take to heart. When I started my company, I started blogging and started publishing on social media. I started life as a purist. I said, I am here to deliver content. I am not going to sully it with any kind of mention of clients or what I do, or asking people for consultations. I'm going to be a purist. So I put out my content, and then I sat around and waited for all that content to start driving business my way. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And it wasn't until I started working with a business coach that started to change. One of the first things she asked me is, well, what's your sales process? And when I told her I didn't have one, I seemed to recall the palm of a hand coming across the side of my head. She said, yeah, that's not going to work. So she set me straight on, content marketing has its place, traditional marketing has its place, and sales has its place. And each of those are important for the organization, for driving revenue and driving results. And we can't sit back and assume that our audiences will connect the dots every single time. Yes, we do need to keep our brand in front of them with quality content, but we also need to, in a respectful way and not in a spammy way, make sure that they know about what we do, what our products are, and that we are inviting them to learn more. So that's lesson number 2 that I learned the hard way. Content marketing does not take the place of sales. The third thing I learned is to be human. When I first started off, I did my research and I knew what topics people wanted to hear about, and I planned my posts very carefully around those topics. And I was out there just trying to be capital P professional in everything that I did. Every sentence was perfectly constructed. There were no sentence fragments, no slang. It was very on the up and up, very professional. And I realized I just wasn't connecting with people. So what I started doing is letting my own vibe, to borrow a word from the 60s, letting my own personality, my own style start shining through. And that included, for example, I've shared with you before, I'm a Generation X, and snark runs through my veins. I am just naturally snarky. I'm also a lover of South Park. I'm also a TV geek who totally geeks out over Game of Thrones and other stuff. And once I started letting my content be a little more human, not only did I start connecting more, but I actually started having more fun. And I started connecting with people on a much more personal level. So yes, we do need to be professional in a sense and cover the topics people are talking about, but we can also be human, and we need to be human, because the whole point of content is to establish a connection with folks, and we can do that much better if we're trying to not to be content robots, but to be actual flesh and blood human beings. The fourth thing I learned is if you have absolutely no critics, then you're playing it safe. I will never forget the first time I got a negative comment on my blog. I almost cried, folks. I was just devastated. And nowadays, when a negative comment or a critical comment or someone disagrees with me comes in, I stand up and cheer. I say, okay, number one, it shows me that the person actually read what I wrote, which is a win right there. And number two, it actually affected them. It struck a chord. It struck a nerve, or they actually processed it and chose to disagree with it. So, if someone has criticized you or has posted a comment on your blog where they disagree with you, celebrate that. That's awesome. It means that you are making a difference and you are getting inside people's heads and you are striking nerves and striking chords and all those other good metaphors. And I want to point out here, there's a difference between bona fide disagreements or bona fide negative feedback and trolls. Trolls are out there just to get a reaction. They're not interested in constructive criticism. They are just out there to make trouble. So when you look at, when you take this advice to heart, just make sure that the trolls are being treated as trolls deserve to be treated, but that those who are giving you honest, critical feedback get the respect they deserve. And finally, the fifth thing that I've learned, and this is so important for us, we need to remember, there's a lot to be said for staying power, for just sticking around and keeping at this. I know how easy it is to get discouraged, okay? I know how much time and effort it takes to do what we do, and it takes so long for those efforts to start to pay off. But one thing I tell my clients, and I tell myself, is hang in there, because your field of competitors is chock full of people who do not have the tenacity to stay the course. Your field of competitors is chock full of people who are going to blog for 3 months and figure, not working, go on to something else. I'll buy some banner ads. It is full of people who may have hired some big agency to create this huge, aggressive content marketing program and then had to fire them when their budget got cut. So, keep that in mind. And the best thing that we can do is continue to show up. We're not going to deliver genius every time we sit down at that keyboard or that microphone or whatever it is we're creating. But we need to show up and give the best that we can give that day. And every time we put something out there, it's an investment. It's a couple of pennies in the piggy bank that are going to add up over time. Remember the farmer. Okay, remember the seeds, planting the seeds, watering the seeds, fertilizing the seeds. And sometimes the things that I've written have smelled a lot like fertilizer. But we have to accept that not every season is going to be a successful one, but we need to keep coming back. We need to keep at it. And I'm going to leave this topic with one of my favorite metaphors about content marketing. And a friend of mine expressed it so beautifully. She said, content marketing is the drop that splits the rock. So if you picture a rock, just a regular old garden rock, and if there is just above the rock a dripping stream of water, okay, it's not a gush, it's not even much of a stream, it just goes drip, 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 drip. If that drip keeps up consistently, day after day, night after night, week after week, and year after year, eventually that rock is going to split wide open. Now, the bean counters are going to want to look at that rock and say, well, which drop split the rock? And let's just only have drops like that from now on. But what we need to understand is every drop has a part in that process. So everything we do, everything we put out there is making a difference and contributing to that entire body of work that is going to deliver some fantastic results over time. So with that, take from that what you will. Those are my 5 biggest content marketing lessons that I have learned ever since I walked out of my corporate job for the last time on October 15th, 2010. If you have any questions or want to add to the conversation, I would love to hear from you, and I will give that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to talk about keeping your finger on the pulse of your audience. If you have listened to this podcast before, you know that my mantra is the first thing you have to do is know your audience. Do not do anything before you've accomplished that. And we tend to think of getting to know that audience as a once and done activity. We do it when we first set out our content marketing program, and then we just kind of follow it as gospel. But actually, audiences can change, and environments in which those audiences move can change. For example, just over the last few years, demographics on Facebook have changed dramatically. They are skewing much older than they have in recent years. So if, for example, you are serving a consumer audience that fits in a more senior bracket and you've been discounting Facebook, you might want to re-examine that. That's an environmental change that can seriously impact your content marketing strategy. So we need to look at our audiences and our environments, I would say at least once a year. And this is the perfect time because we're going to start planning for 2016 here shortly. And this is a really good time to revisit your audience. And we need to use the tools available to keep our finger on that pulse. Know what's on their minds, what they're concerned about, what their aspirations are. And we can do that by asking open questions on social media. We can conduct formal polls. We can call people, we can get on Google Hangouts and do a focus group. There are many tools that we have available. And then we can take that knowledge and spin it into quality, relevant content that speaks to that audience today. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via the RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our website at resonancecontent.com, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. As I mentioned, it is our 5-year anniversary this month, and in fact today is the day. But to celebrate that, we are doing a new webinar called Stand Out, 5 Ways to Get Noticed Online. To grab your spot, go to resonancewebinar.com. As always, I'd like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from Winston Churchill. He once said, quote, "Some people dream of success, while others wake up and work hard at it," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.